You're tying a lot of your value to that because you're selling yourself, whereas it really is a service that you're selling. And I think separating that from yourself is massive, because if you tie it to yourself, like, and people keep saying no, it's going to take a hit to your confidence. Like, yeah, there's a lot of mindset that goes into it. Honestly, I think mindset is probably like 80% of what business owners should work on.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be fantastic. We have with us a guest that is a business strategist, productivity coach, podcaster, and chief efficiency officer. She likes to call it CEO of Brittany & Co. and the Productivity on Purpose movement. Brittany Dixon, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. And I love, I don't think we've done a productivity podcast episode in a long time. And I know they're one of the favorites of our listener. And so I'm looking forward to this. This is what you do. This is how you help people in the world. And I'm looking forward to getting into that. Before we do that, please tell us a little bit about you, your career journey leading up to this point.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually a mom of twins. I live right outside of Columbus, Ohio, but we are actually about to embark on a year-long RV adventure, living in an RV all across the U.S. So coming to a city near you, hopefully.
Wow.
But yeah, I started off in the wedding and event planning space. I was doing some wedding planning and worked for a corporate restaurant, doing a lot of their big catering events and things. And then I actually got let go from my job and became an accidental entrepreneur. Never, ever thought I would be a business owner. But when I got let go, I decided to start my own professional organizing company. So it was called Clutter Control. And I basically went in and helped organize moms' houses. Again, being a twin mom, that was most of my clientele. So that was super fun. And then hired a business coach to really figure out what I was doing from a business perspective. And she kind of let me in on this whole online space for online businesses and coaches and consultants. And I really dove into being able to help business owners organize instead of organizing houses. So really, I went from organizing events to organizing houses to organizing businesses. I've just been that type A organized person my whole life, and it kind of followed me through my entire journey. But really got into the business side and saw that there were so many business owners that were being held back because they didn't have systems, processes, organization, and efficiency. And that was my sweet spot and my jam. So decided to go all in on the business. I do some consulting, podcasting, coaching, all that good stuff. So
beautiful. I'd love to hear, in that transition, there was a few transitions. What were some of the major hurdles you had to get over for you personally?
The pivots were definitely tough. I grew up in a really low income family, so most of my struggles were all money mindset issues. Really getting into the online space and people telling you that you could make $200 to $500 an hour, depending on what kind of consulting you did, was just mind-boggling to me, and really having to get over some of those hurdles were huge. And then I think just the pivots in general were tough because, while they have a lot of the same things in common, they're kind of three separate things, and just figuring out kind of that new space, moving from organizing houses to businesses, figuring out different clientele. So yeah, the pivots were definitely tough, but I would say it was mostly mindset stuff when it came to the obstacles that I came over.
Money one comes up a lot for our listener, and it's due to the fact that you're pricing yourself, and many people have been set in our society around work for time for money, and that hourly rate that you get. I was like, wow. So, I'm going to work for an hour and make $300. Like
Yeah.
most people are making 20, and even that's high in some countries or states or wherever.
Yeah.
So how did you tackle that for yourself?
Yeah, I think first I kind of had to shift from that hourly mindset to more like value-based pricing and knowing that the services that I was giving someone was helping them gain time back and actually make more money. And a lot of the systems that I helped set up as far as like task management systems or CRMs, like those things were actually going to lead a business owner to make a lot more money in the long run. So I think just kind of cutting out that whole like hourly mindset, which is tough coming from a low income family, coming from working in corporate where I was making hourly. That was a really hard transition. But I think once I started thinking more about it in value of like, hey, I'm doing this service for this large amount of money, but they're actually going to make 10x that very quickly. I think that's kind of when I started thinking like, oh, okay, I can totally charge this. Now, I will say it was a very slow progression, right? Like I didn't go from $20 an hour to 500 overnight. I would just kind of start testing it more and more. I would raise my prices little by little. And the more yeses I got, obviously, the more confidence I got to continue charging that and continue kind of upgrading that. But yeah, I think it was that hourly versus value-based pricing. That was the big shift for me.
Nice. And sounds like you did a little bit of the hourly pricing first to just keep bumping that up, which I think is a great strategy. I mean, it's like once it goes up and you're comfortable there, you've got a new set point. And so then the next step was the value pricing, really connecting with the value of the work that you do and how it impacts your customer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely gradual. This was not like an overnight thing by any means. And obviously, every time you kind of increase those prices, if you get no's, there's a lot of mindset setbacks with that too, right? Like, oh, I shouldn't have increased it that much. Maybe I should take it backwards. But again, all of my hurdles have really been mindset. So doing daily journaling, doing mindset work, doing all of these things on a consistent basis were massive for me.
That's right. It's one of the things that as a business owner, where you're, for a lot of it in the beginning, selling yourself, a lot of mindset work, mindset work. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mindset work has to go into things.
Yeah. You're tying a lot of your
obstacles.
value. You're tying a lot of your value to that because you're selling yourself, whereas it really is a service that you're selling. And I think separating that from yourself is massive because if you tie it to yourself, and people keep saying no, it's going to take a hit to your confidence. There's a lot of mindset that goes into it. Honestly, I think mindset is probably 80% of what business owners should work on.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got our skill, get the coconut in shape and go for it. Well, that's good. I love hearing that. That's a struggle many face and put off too long because, the math is very clear. Yep. If you increase your price by 20%, that's a lot over, a handful of clients. And that's every single, if you have recurring business, that's every single year that as an increase. It doesn't go backwards from that. So I thank you for sharing that. Yeah. You mentioned RV. Now you just mentioned that. It piqued my interest, but we skipped over it a little bit. Tell me about the RV.
Yeah. So my husband and I and our twins have been campers forever. We actually had an old fifth wheel and camped for probably 4 years and just loved it. So it was normally weekend camping, week here and there, that kind of thing. And I think last year it just really hit, my kids turned 10. I was like, oh my gosh, my kids turned 10. We just lived through this pandemic and this crazy time. Life's too short. And I was like, I think we should live in one for a year and just travel. And it was kind of just this pie in the sky thing at the time. I'm like, oh, that would be really fun. That'd be really cool. Well, then I started talking about how much I wanted it and how cool that would be, and my kids would love it. It would be amazing experience, and kept putting it out into the universe more and more. And things just started kind of lining up really well. Obviously, my business is online, so I can really work from anywhere as long as I have Wi-Fi. My husband had an in-person job, but he then in January this year was actually offered something that was remote. And when that happened, it was pretty much like the universe saying, like, you have to do this. And it went into full speed. We pretty much purchased the RV and the new truck. We got a big 44-foot fifth wheel. So we're definitely not like roughing it by any means.
Right.
But yeah, we're like, let's just do this. So since February of this year, we've really been prepping everything. We're going to be renting out our house for a year, purchased the RV, got everything going, and we're actually moved into it, and we leave.
I see this. I'm looking at, I saw that. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But I see the shades on the window look very RV-ish.
Yeah. So
I was like, okay,
leave in 26 days from the date of this recording. So very, very soon. Wow. And we're kind of just setting out. We're going to Maine first. Like I said, I'm from Ohio, so we have to come back here for a wedding. So we're going to make our way up and back down, and then basically just a big circle around the U.S. So super exciting and also terrifying all at the same time.
Wow. Well, that's very exciting. And there is a little of that conversation happening in our family. My wife does not have a very flexible job. So that's a barrier, but we are planning and thinking about very similar. It's like we have young kids, as I mentioned earlier, and it's the pandemic. We just feel like it'd be a good opportunity. We won't do it for a year, that's for sure, but an extended period of time to just go and be with the family and travel and try to do the thing wherever you can work from home. I mean, internet has really opened up a lot of opportunities for being anywhere in the world, right?
It has. Yeah. It's changed a lot. And I think the homeschool thing, my kids are really excited about that. They're excited to do this. So I feel like it was a perfect time before they kind of went into middle school with like friends that they're attached to, that I was like, we have to do this now. Yes. So, and I know a lot of families that they started doing it for a year and they're 3 years in and didn't look back. So this could be something that ends up being longer. We could come back. It's all up in the air right now, which the planner and me, I don't love that, right? Like I like having things planned out, and right now it's very much flexible.
Right. Well, I hope you get up into Canada on your travels, because it's beautiful up here, and I think you'd like it. So there's another place to put on your planning destination.
Of course.
Exercises, yes. Well, I will say there's a couple of things about that really strike to me. It is businesses, businesses we build are they're there. Many people get into business because they're going to have more freedom, more opportunity, more money, maybe more fun and enjoyment. And often the business becomes the gorilla on the back, where it's actually not doing that. And so planning and building a business that gives you, and you've done this, where you've built a business that is fueling the things that you want in your life. And so that's refreshing and exciting, I think, inspiring for our listener. Doesn't mean that everybody wants to get into an RV, but it's really being clear, what do you want? And not having the shackles on to not be able to do the things that you want, and being in business for yourself. Really, you do have the opportunity to create that. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's been super exciting. And like you mentioned, not everybody wants to do this, right? But I think the freedom piece of it, and the flexibility and the balance, and really knowing those goals and what success means for you is huge, because it's different for every person. And if you're trying to follow someone else's success path, when you get there, it's not going to be fulfilling. So really just knowing what that is for you, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Now let's get into a little bit of the productivity conversation. Yes. You have mentioned in the work that you do that goal setting is like a diet that everyone goes on. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, when January rolls around and everyone's like, let's hit the gym, let's get a gym membership, we're going to go on this diet, it's going to be amazing. And by February, most of it drops off, right? So I see this in goal setting a lot as well. People set these big, massive goals and then don't have the daily habits to actually make those goals happen. Every January, business owners set goals, maybe even every quarter. But as the quarter rolls on and the days kind of drag through, you kind of start to lose momentum. You forget what those goals are. You're not doing things that actually move towards those. So I really see too many people not actually putting those daily habits in place to make those goals happen. So you've got to set those big goals, but then you've got to start breaking it down into small things, and it's got to go on your calendar, right? Like it's got to be somewhere that actually is going to make it happen. So for example, I see a lot of business owners that don't put like sales and marketing time or admin time on their calendar. And then they let their calendar fill up, and then they still have to do those things on top of a full calendar. And that's where I start to see people working 17 hours, working on vacation, laptop out at night, because they haven't set aside time for those things that are going to move the needle forward in their business. So I like to tell people that you've really got to put those things on reoccurrence in a certain time block every single week, because if you don't do sales and marketing, you're not going to get business. We all have to do admin stuff, but if you don't put the time on there to do the admin stuff, you're going to have to do it after hours. So I think really just starting to take those things and break those things down and actually block out time for them instead of just having them on a vision board or having them on a Pinterest board or whatever you do for goal setting. You've got to take the consistent action and have those habits built in to your week, or else week by week is just going to kind of run over, and then you're going to get to the beginning of the year again and not hit a lot of your goals. So yeah, I just kind of relate it to the whole like gym thing at the beginning. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, let's do this. And then it fades off pretty quickly.
That's right. And if you're not doing the work, you're not going to get the results. And, if you go to the gym a couple times, great.
Yeah.
Everything just kind of drips away after you stop going. I live relatively well by my calendar. It was something I was fortunate to find over 20 years ago, was the whole concept of time blocking. And now I can't imagine not doing time blocking, because when you think about it, especially with young kids, because there's so many different inputs, outputs, people, life, everything that's going on. For a small business owner, it's even worse. I mean, if you know you're at work for 8 hours, that in a way is a forced time block, right? You're there. Yep. Now, what gets done there, again, time blocking can help dramatically, but at least, when you work from home, the time block can be very fluid. And so that becomes even more important in my mind. But I'm curious there's so many people that don't use their calendar. It's not the conviction around it. I mean, I have a saying, and I think it came from that course: if it isn't in the calendar, it doesn't exist. And so but there's so many that aren't doing it. How do people keep going to the gym? Number one, how do they, what's the gym look like for someone to start going? Yeah. And then how do they stay going?
Yeah, I think it's just consistency, right? And like I revisit my goals on a quarterly basis, if not more. A lot of times I even do it monthly, because I think it's seeing it consistently and knowing that's what you're working towards, and kind of like recalibrating to make sure that you're on track with that. I would say if you're not using a calendar for it, you've got to have some kind of system, right? Like you have to have something to be able to track this, to be able to measure these things. Because if you don't have it in front of you, you don't have a way to track it, then you don't know if you're making progress or not. And I think especially as entrepreneurs, we're very high achieving. We have all the ideas. We want to do all the things constantly. And a lot of what I teach too is business minimalism, because I think too many entrepreneurs try to take on too much. And they're like, I'm going to do this, and also run a business. And I'm like, that's enough projects for like a year, and you just told me you're going to do that in a month. So I think being more realistic about how long things take, and really starting to minimize and choosing the things that are most important to you. But you've got to have something in place. So if you're not a calendar fan, you've got to have something in place where you know what you need to be doing weekly to move the needle towards those goals. It could be a whiteboard, right? If that works for you, go for it. But you've got to constantly revisit that. You have to constantly make sure things are moving towards those goals. You got to constantly check in. It really comes down to like your weekly routine, right? If you think about it, all of us kind of live the same routine week over week. Now, there's variances, right? We've got vacations, we've got weeks that are a little bit different, but for the most part, if you look at your calendar week over week, it's pretty much the same. We're creatures of habit. So you can either let that calendar control you and like dictate your day, or you can control it and put the things that you actually want that are moving you towards your goals. So if it's not a calendar, make it a paper planner, make it a whiteboard, whatever it is for you, but it's got to be visible. You've got to consistently look at it and check in and kind of recalibrate.
And was this always something you mentioned? Your background is planning. When did it start that you got good at this?
Yeah, so I have always been that type A organized planner person. I would say that, so when I was doing the home organizing, I think it kind of started because I had to run my own business. So I was doing all of those back-end admin things. But I think really when I got into the online space, it hit me more. And I don't know if it's because my goals got bigger that I had to like keep on track with things better, or life, twins, all the chaos that comes with those things. But I would say about 3 or 4 years into business, I really realized that my weekly planning routine and mapping things out and time blocking made such a difference in my business growth, my mindset, my anxiety levels, my personal time that I was able to have. And I realized that the more I was planning things and blocking time out for personal and business and admin and all of those things, the more freedom I actually had, which sounds crazy because it sounds more planned out. But I feel like the more structure you have, the more freedom it actually allows you. So I think when I saw that start to help my business and my mindset and personal mental health, I went all in on it. And the more I went in on that kind of planning system, the more I saw results from it. So then, of course, I just wanted to keep doing it.
Amazing. Yeah. So there's definitely some trickery there. I love to hear your take on that, making it work for you. And I love that, the freedom. I often hear that from people around any kind of productivity management, time blocking, any conversation. It does come up. People say, I don't want to be that constrained to my calendar. I want freedom. I've heard that. And the crazy thing is that it actually does create more freedom in so many areas. Like, it's not just freedom to go somewhere or do something, but freedom of mind, all sorts of benefits. So what are some of the tricks or things that you see have helped your clients get this going in their life? Yeah,
totally. So one of the things I did probably about 2.5, 3 years ago, I kept telling myself, like, I want to take Fridays off. I want a 3-day weekend. I want more 3-day weekends that I can spend time with my kids. I want more 3-day weekends that I can stop working. So I kept saying that over and over, and I would still say yes to stuff on Fridays. Something would come up on a Wednesday, and they're like, hey, do you want to meet on Friday? Hey, I want to take an appointment on Friday. And I would keep saying yes to it. And finally, I think it was probably 2022, I kept saying that over and over. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go into my calendar and I'm literally going to put a time block that says do not book every single Friday for the entire year of 2022. I'm going to see if this works for me. So I did that. And I think it just made me be more aware of it because I'm actually seeing it on my calendar, that I made more conscious decisions about what went in on Fridays. Now, did I take every single Friday of 2022 off? Absolutely not. Did I work some? Did I work none? Yes. There was a mix of it, but I felt like I was being more intentional when somebody said, hey, let's book on Friday. I would see that and I said, hey, you know what? Let's actually book on Wednesday. And I would be more intentional with what I put on my calendar. So I will say I probably took off 50% of the Fridays in 2022, or did minimal work and had a lot more flexibility. So I think one of the tricks is to actually just put that in your calendar that says, do not book appointments. And you now have the flexibility to either actually listen to that, which is a boundary thing with yourself, or you have more flexibility to say, you know what, let's actually look at a different date, or I will take that on a Friday because I took last Friday off. So I think that just gives you more just like in your face, kind of seeing what you want your schedule to be instead of just in the moment letting it take over. So that's definitely one of the things, is blocking out time that says like, do not work.
That's a nice incentive for our listener, is, having a full day off. If in a busy life where you feel like you're working 7 days a week, evenings and whatnot, which often we hear from in our community, is, wow, can you imagine having a whole day completely blocked to do no work whatsoever? It's almost unbelievable for many.
Yep.
But you did it, and it takes something. And there's this, when you were speaking earlier, I was actually thinking about Google Calendar. Yep. And I don't, they're always changing functionality, but there's this thing called out of office, which a lot of my blocks in my calendar are just busy blocks, because that's what I blocked them. But I just realized today, it's like, I should set all those to out of office, because when people book, it tells them I'm not available, because I've been seeing lately things start stacking over top of those blocks. It's like, how'd that get in there?
Yep.
And so it's also working the technology a little bit to help make that a reality. And I love that trick that you've given, is block the whole day, is don't block anything in this spot. And recur that for the entire year. And if you're not ready now, maybe people, just like getting your rates up and changing how you price, this might be a gradual. Maybe you can speak to that to get there.
I mean, with that, block off 4 hours, right? Like block off a half day on Friday. Maybe you can't take a full day off. And it didn't happen for me like immediately, right? This, again, it's a habit that I'm building, and there was a lot of boundary things with it and mindset things, going back full circle, right? Because I was like, no, I'm not allowed to take a day off. I'm a business owner. I have to work all the time. And I think getting over that piece of it and knowing that rest actually is productive also was huge. I think the boundary of saying no to things that came up on Friday, or telling them that I need to move to a different day, was huge. So it is something that you're going to have to build up to, especially if this is not something you're accustomed to. But block 4 hours out, right? Block 2 hours out. Block out a Monday morning so you can have a slow Monday morning. But I think if you really build out your ideal week in a calendar of some kind, you start to see what it can look like, and then you start to form everything into that. Right? Like if you have an ideal calendar and an ideal week mapped out of when you're going to take time off, what is personal time, what is time for clients, what is time for sales, what time do you have for admin? If you start to map that out, you can start to see that. And I have people build a separate calendar in Google that's like my ideal week, so that you can overlay your week and see how those pieces actually fit together. Because once you have those boundaries, it's almost like bumpers, right? Like you see the bumpers and you know that you have to kind of conform within that. But yeah, definitely gradually move up. Block off 2 hours here, block off 4 hours here. But you've got to start putting some of that time in so that you don't burn out, because I've burnt out before. Trust me, it's not fun.
No, absolutely. It's tons of burnout in our industry here. Yeah. And so this will be great, an inspiration. I hope our listener can dream big with getting more time off. You're absolutely right. It's proven fact. In fact, I believe it's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People.
Yep.
Sharpen the saw.
Yep.
Right? It's like you need to take time to go and sharpen your saw, and just meaning like a dull saw.
Yeah.
It cuts so fast. Same energy required, just a lot more of it. Time off sharpens the saw for your mental aspect. And as you've said today, it's one of the most important pieces of being successful in business is the mindset. Well, if we're exhausted and burnt out, we got a long road to climb.
Just think about coming back from vacation, right? I don't know about the listeners or anything, but I know when I go on vacations, I'm not working, right? Like, let's preface that you're not working on vacation. I feel like so many more ideas come and I get clarity and I think of new things that I haven't thought of because my mind is not like in the daily grind constantly. So yeah, I think most entrepreneurs' problems come back to time management. The reason you're not hitting goals, the reason you're not growing the business, the reason you're working 17 hours a day, like so much of that comes back to time management. And it's something that we can control if we put routines, habits, and tools in place that actually allow us to manage that time better. And I think that a lot of the burnout could be taken away if we put some more of that in place.
So true. So true. Well said. Tell us more about work you do with your clients. I'm sure many of our listeners are interested in knowing how you help others do this in their life.
For sure. So I focus a lot on the time management aspect, a lot on the task management aspect, because that's kind of the other piece of this, right? Like, yes, you've managed your time, but now what are you doing with that time? So I actually do a lot of system setups as far as like project and task management tools. So my favorite is Asana, and I'll come in and really help you basically pull everything out of your head and put it into a system that has recurring tasks, that has all the stuff that you need to do, the ideas, the projects. So really just getting it all into like a command center. I also help with a lot of CRM setups. So everyone knows that leads and clients are the lifeblood of our business. And so many entrepreneurs don't have a hub to keep track of all of that. So I really help set up systems in that way. And then just general efficiency, right? Like making sure that you're organized in finding passwords and logins and usernames and files. So a lot of just that digital organization aspect. So I work with clients in numerous different ways. I've got like smaller coaching things that I can just help you learn to do it. I have things where I come in and actually do it for you. Obviously, I have my podcast as well. If you want some free information and tips, it's the productivitypodcast.co. So really just lots of different ways that I teach, but I love it. I love the organization and color coding and systems and processes and SOPs. And most people didn't start a business to run a business. And I think that is where people get hung up, right? They're like, I'm really good at this thing. I know I can help people. I know I can make money, but the running the business aspect is exhausting me because I don't have systems and organization in place. And that's where I come into play. So you can definitely just kind of check out what I offer on my website. It's just bcohq.co. We've kind of got all the different things over there. So
love it. So great. This has been absolutely fantastic. It's such a valuable piece of our life and our business, the productivity aspect. You have so much to offer. I hope our listener will go and listen to the productivitypodcast.co. We'll, of course, have the link that our listener can click to get to that. And on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for your generosity in coming on the show and sharing your expertise.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. And yeah, if I can help in any way, just let me know.
Beautiful. We will definitely do that. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.